everybody, Foley here. Welcome to the weekly news recap of the 19th to the 25th of May 2025. So, this week, there were actually three showcases. We're going to talk about two. So the first one up is the SixOne Indie Showcase that started back in 2022. After the pandemic, a bunch of indies got together and decided to have their own showcase. So we have 48 indie games shown off. Took about 75 minutes or so to get through. So I'm going to start here with Truth Scrapper. This is the next game from the same developer behind In Stars and Time, which was a kind of time loop kind of puzzle game. Truth Scrapper is sort of a scrapbooking game where you are in a kind of idyllic, like adventure kind of thing. You're meeting a lot of different people and you're taking notes essentially and building out a scrapbook that way. And depending on what notes you put down, it changes some of your memories and some of your options going forward into the story and so on. No release date or anything like that. It's some while off. Shadows of Chroma Tower we have seen before. It's a first-person fantasy dungeon crawler type thing that does have both PvE and PvP. Chroma Tower meaning like lots of colors, so it is a very colorful game. It's got a little bit of Void Bastards to it somewhat. There is a playtest coming up pretty soon, so if you check out its Steam page you'll be able to drop into that if you're interested. Artist Impact is also a game that we have seen previously. It now has a release date, so it is going to be out August 7th, I believe. You're gonna go full screen for me, YouTube, or no? Thinking about it? There we go. Okay. Yeah, so we saw this previously. It's got a really nice art style. It's got like a very detailed animated pixel art kind of thing to it. So all of the animations are very fluid. And the kind of shadow box it swaps to for combat scenarios is pretty nice and pretty fun. I did play the demo of this a while ago, and it is a very fun game. It is a little bit tropey, you know, it is a little bit anime, but overall I quite enjoyed my time with the demo, so I am looking forward to that game now. 7th of August for that. This is a little bit of a behind the scene on how they do their animations and how they do their art and stuff like that. Anyway, 7th of August for that one. I don't remember what the next trailer I have for, so we're going to see when it comes up. 1,000 Deaths has a demo available now as well. This is kind of like a precision platformer kind of thing. The 1,000 Deaths, it's how many times you're going to die. Pretty much playing the game, because it does look like it is pretty tough. But yeah, kind of like a, not exactly like Super Meat Boy kind of thing, but it is like an arcadey platformer type thing. Bobo Bay is a creature collector. The creatures effectively look like chows from Sonic the Hedgehog, so it's like chows but Pokemon. And you collect these chows, not chows, and send them into like different mini games like racing and duels and stuff like that. But it is like a funny, fuzzy, cozy time. Bunny Bear Saves Frog Time is kind of just an narrative adventure game. This is from the same developers behind Once Upon a Jester, which is also a kind of narrative comedy kind of thing. It's kind of the standout is like they're very surreal games. And the voice acting is all done by the developers, and they're not professional voice actors, but they're also not trying really either. It does have the vibe of just friends just taking the piss a lot, and Jester's very funny. It's a very funny game, and it does look like Bunny Bear Saves Frog Time is going to be much the same. There is a demo for it out on Steam as well if you're interested. Oscuro Blossoms Glow is a kind of puzzle platformer, 2D puzzle platformer type thing, where you are kind of manipulating light, and there's something to do with the interplay between light and shadow that kind of works between the puzzles. And then there's a bunch of like insect stuff as well. You can collect like dung beetles and snails and stuff as well. Cast and Chill is just a fishing game, like dedicated. If anything, I think it's like an idle game. I'm not sure there's too much game to it. It does have a dog, so you know that's already put it ahead of a lot of other games. Anyway, it is a dedicated fishing indie, and as pointed out here, looks gorgeous. It does actually look really nice. The pixel art is really well done. we jumped into music rhythm games at that point. So Future Vibe check, we did. I think we've heard about this one before, but it is effectively like Factorio or Satisfactory, but music essentially. So instead of producing rocks and bricks and whatever else you produce in Satisfactory and Factorio, why does YouTube not want to go full screen? Instead of that, you are now producing music. So you're sort of chaining your production line together to make like satisfying music, and there are like missions and things that you need to produce. Like you need to produce this many beats and you need to produce this much thing and whatever. So you're trying to like streamline it and make it efficient, but also make it like sound nice. It's an interesting idea. It's an interesting concept. There's like kind of things they're showing off here. The beat maker is the heartbeat, and then there's this I forget what naming they give for the head, but it's effectively deciding where to send these beats, and then you have these additional blocks that kind of bounce the beat along to different things. Anyway, we'll see how it works out exactly, because it's an interesting idea, but I can't see... Of the trailer that they showed off, the music is pleasing, but it's also like a lot of overlapping, somewhat independent. Now, the fact that they're using like a beat maker and any other additional beat makers you make more than likely are all on the same beat, or at least on a timed interval, so they're not going to be too out of phase or out of sync or anything like that. At least if I was developing it, that's how I'd do it, but I guess we'll see how it works out for them. Believe there is a demo available now, or went available at the time of the showcase. Yeah, just went available that day, so you can check it out if you're interested. Fretless the Wrath of Rifson is a kind of adventure RPG kind of thing that is played mostly by music. It has a significant OST of a lot of contributing artists. I haven't heard of any of them, but that's because I'm old. Anyway, King Yosef, Ola England have just joined. And then it also includes Northlane, Cult of Luna, and Juang, Yvette Young, and more. I don't know any of them. I assume they're good. Who knows? Anyway, it's out sometime this year. No demo for this one. Away From Home is again a kind of rhythm action thing. It is set to release on October 22nd. And that is the spooky month, and the game does have some element of horror to it. So on the surface, it's a kind of pixel art adventure kind of thing. It seems to be following what I assume are brother and sister, but I don't know if that's true. And I believe your brother gets captured at some point. I think a lot of the scenes we're seeing now are very early in the game. And then it is essentially up to you to rescue them, I think. But anyway, there's kind of the rhythm action stuff. It is obviously a little bit fantastical. And at some point, you can see like a lot of the I've gone back way too far now. A lot of the combat scenarios, it's just the girl, just the sister, who I assume. And you don't see the brother for a lot of them, so I'm assuming he gets captured like early in the game. I think there's a bit later on that shows him there, where he's captured. Anyway, that's Away From Home, 22nd of October for that one. Anatine is kind of interesting. It is a pixel art Metroidvania where you are playing a mallard duck guy who's also a warrior, and it's all kind of music based. So it's a little bit of Ocarina of Time. It's like you dial in the notes and then they play it on their flute. How does a duck play a flute? Significant difficulty, I imagine. But anyway, it does look nice. Looks very cute, and the pixel art for the duck is very nice. So it does kind of remind me of like sort of dial-a-combo stuff for some of the Castlevanias that became more explore action stuff rather than the straight action games of the early Castlevanias. I'm thinking like the later ones where you could do like Hadouken motions and your character would do specific abilities. It does kind of have that idea to it, and that you like dial in the move. What exactly the music does for you, it seems to just do attacks, but I imagine it's going to be used in puzzles and stuff like that as well. We're continuing with the music theme. Scratch the Cat is like an old school collectathon, so think like Banjo-Kazooie, and I guess Donkey Kong 64 if you have to. You're playing a cat who's also a DJ, but it is very much like N64 era 3D platformer type thing. Thousand Times Resist is getting a vinyl press. If you're into that kind of thing, the soundtrack is very good. Moving on to sort of more vehicular-based stuff. So Jump the Track it's kind of a arcade comedy kind of thing. And it is somewhat random what happens in the story and what decisions are made. So it's like a pachinko sort of kind of machine that's deciding what routes you take and what decisions are made and the storytelling, and you can somewhat influence it in the way that you can somewhat influence a pachinko machine, but not quite. It is still somewhat random, and that leads to like shenanigans and hilariousness. Anyway, that's out pretty soon. It's actually out next week, 28th of May. Scaravan 66 we had seen before. This is kind of a roguelike vehicular combat kind of game. But more like, it's kind of like a chase, because you're all driving down Route 66, effectively. That's why it's called that. And you are a mercenary, assassin, whatever, but you are chasing after these kind of characters. It's got a Americana, rockabilly or Americana kind of vibe going on. Early access, 16th of July. I forget now, what is the next trailer I had? I skipped over again. No, we haven't got there yet. Okay, hang on. It's coming up. Alright, Rogue Eclipse as the 3D space dogfighting game. It does look very pretty. There aren't many 3D space dogfighting games because they are hard to do well. There hasn't been a new Star Fox in a very long time. The last dogfighting game I remember is Chorus, which I felt was good, but it was too long of a game. But yeah, I thought it was interesting. Anyway, moving into the weird game, so Glitch Spanker, that's our next trailer. So, Glitch Spanker, you're playing a 12-year-old boy set in the 90s, and you are looking to borrow your mom's secret game, Big Booty Slapper 6. Okay, mom has... She's a real connoisseur, I suppose. Anyway, however, a virus named Spunk has infected and broken the game. It is now up to you with the Glitch Spanker antiviral software to rid the game of Spunk so you can get back to playing Big Booty Slapper 6. Anyway, how does that work out? It is essentially a collection of very silly minigames. And there is a little bit of a... not a time loop to it exactly, but there are like multiple endings, multiple routes you can take. So some of them are just, just do what the game says, get rid of the virus and get it out of the game. Some of them are like help the virus corrupt the game further, etc., etc. But it is essentially just going into kind of like very silly mini games and slapping things with your stupid hand thing and slapping some booties occasionally as well. Anyway, it's very silly looking, so yeah, I am kind of interested to see a little bit more of it. It's even got a little bit of some horror channels as well. Why not? Anyway, that's Glitch Spanker VR. No, not VR. Glitch Spanker. There should be a VR version of it. That is out, don't know when, but there is a demo. I am going to check out that demo because it does sound really dumb. Guilty as Sock is a party game. You can play with 10 people, so you and 9 friends. Who the fuck has 9 friends? I don't know. Anyway, you are playing sock puppets, effectively. Sock lawyers, in a way. So it's Ace Attorney, but everyone's a sock puppet. And it is kind of just like chaos and stuff. Like the whole premise of it is to take disputes that in your friend group and bring them up in this Guilty as Sock thing, and then have like legal room shenanigans to figure out, sort your differences out. Anyway, 29th of May, which is next week, I think. Grandma No is a little bit Untitled Goose Game, but you're a grandma. And I believe the idea with it is that grandma moves by herself. She doesn't move by herself, but she like flings her arms by herself or something like that. And as you direct her, she'll pick up things. And maybe she'll pick up things you don't want her to pick up and so on. But it is generally like a kind of chaos thing, which is not unlike Untitled Goose Game. It's out already, actually, as far as I'm aware. It came out like the day after that live stream. Building Relationships we've seen before. It is like a literal title. You're a building and you're looking for a relationship, so it's a dating sim, except everyone is a building of some kind. So you're playing a house, but you will come across things like semi-detached houses and tents and apartments and there's a chest of drawers, or not a chest of drawers, a treasure chest at some point, which I think is stretching the idea of a building a little bit, but okay. Anyway, there's a demo for that now as well. It's been in development a while, so I think it's going to be out pretty soon. Hotel Barcelona is the team-up game between Swery65 and Suda51, so it's probably going to be jank. It's going to be jank as fuck, but it'll be like super stylish. So you're playing an assassin who's out to assassinate several serial killers, which isn't... It's sort of right. You're playing a US Marshal, I think, who has a split personality, and the other personality is an assassin. Of course, because Swery and Suda have to do these things. Anyway, it is a 2.5D slasher film parody action game. It is kind of a Metroidvania look to it. Anyway, I'm not sure if it has the sort of backtracking search action stuff that Metroidvanias are known for, or it's more of a linear thing. It is out some point this year, but we don't have a specific release date for it yet. Rue Valley is kind of interesting. So the opening blurb of the trailer is, have you ever been in a situation where you need to do something simple, but somehow you just can't? Welcome to your brain, where your thoughts and personality traits fight for control like a group project gone wrong. So it does have a little bit of Disco Elysium going on. YouTube is just refusing to do full screen. I don't know why. So, if people who've played Disco Elysium might know, you do have like warring personality traits that do somewhat affect what you are able to do. Your pain threshold will affect your ability to endure a lot of pain. Your addiction, I forget its actual name, it's electrochemistry or something, but basically if you come across alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, whatever, depending on what level that is, you're going to really want them or you're going to really not want them, and so on. So this game is taking some of a similar idea. Depending on your personality, you will be able to or not be able to do certain activities, but you're also able to sort of figure out ways around it. So you saw there, he's very introverted, but if he got drunk, the introversion isn't so bad anymore. So it's kind of an idea of playing with those personality traits and sort of flip-flopping them as the need arises. And I do think it has some kind of time loop thing going to it. You can see there the 847 changes to an infinity symbol at some point. So I do think you like restart the day. So I think there's like a memento thing going on there. We're not entirely sure though, just yet. Don't think there's a demo or anything like that for it just yet, but it is wishlistable. Karamara, Beneath the Forlorn Limbs, has a little bit of a inscription thing going on. Okay, now it's gonna go. All right. Anyway, so Karamara has. It kind of seems like it is a card game at the beginning, but I think it's really more just an interesting way to display a decision tree rather than like a card game. So I think you're just like collecting items, and those items like appear in the form of a card, but you're using it to like ask people questions and stuff. So I don't think it's necessarily a card game, but I think it's somewhat presented in an interesting way. What the actual story, I don't know. Whatever the forlorn are, nobody wants to talk about it. And it does have a little bit of an inscription vibe to it. That's creepy. Not sure on release dates for this one. Launching soon, yeah, but there's no release date just yet. Battle Versus isn't a game. It's a tabletop thing. That I'm not sure why it was included, but there we are. Anyway, a week in the life of asocial giraffe even. So this is kind of like a comedy, thank goodness you're here sort of thing, but the idea is you're playing a giraffe who is asocial, not good at social situations, but everyone around you is like very extroverted, and it is kind of almost a survival thing. You're sort of trying to avoid social situations, and if you get caught in social situations, your stress meter goes up as you hear, so your giraffe neck is kind of a thermometer. If it hits the top, done for the day, more or less. Anyway, there's a demo available for it. It has very nice art and animations, and I think it's quite cute. Inkshade, if you thought Karamara had a bit of an Inscription vibe to it, Inkshade is just, hey, what about Inscription? What about Inscription, but instead of a card game, we're going to do like board game tactics, effectively. I'm kind of interested in it because its art style is really nice. And whatever board game they're playing, I want to play it. I don't know what it is, but it looks great. It's got this kind of like hex, and all the little minis are really nice. How the game actually, like the game you were playing inside the game, works, I don't know. If it's a standard like war game kind of thing, like a Warhammer or Dungeons and Dragons or something like that, I don't know. There's clearly the Inscription vibe. You're playing against this inscrutable enemy on the opposite side of the table, and then there is lots of different like puzzles and things that you can find in the environment when you get up from the table and look around. But I don't know, the main draw for me is mostly its art style, and I just think it looks really nice. Don't think it had a release date. No, there is a demo though, so again, this is the second demo that I want to check out. Nearly there, guys. 48 games, remember? Anyway, Kajora is a little bit Stranger Things, somewhat, or The Goonies, and it occurs to me that the name of the film, The Goonies, may not mean what younger viewers might think it means. Anyway, it's a 2D narrative time loop adventure. It does have some really nice animated art. It's a really nice art style. It does have like a Saturday morning cartoon vibe to it. It's scheduled for the 4th of September. There's a demo if you want to check it out. One Way Home is a little bit inside. It's a little bit limbo. It's a little nightmares in some ways. The idea is you have one way home. You have to go that way, but doing it is going to be dangerous and difficult. So you traverse through a city that's falling apart alone and haunted by some mysterious force with the power to take away everything you love. Anyway, demo available. It looks pretty good. Mouse, PI for Horror, previously known as just Mouse. They had to change the name because Disney got annoyed. Anyway, this is, you've probably seen this one before, but it's like a first-person Cuphead in some ways, or what if Mickey Mouse was playing Doom in some ways. The trailer hasn't really shown or given away anything more. It's shown off a couple of the guns. Out sometime this year. No demo just yet. Kabuto Park is another creature catching thing. This time it's beetles, because that's what a Kabuto is. So catch cute bugs, win tiny battles, and train your team to become the best team of bugs. So it's cute, cozy kind of thing. It's out next week. There's a demo available for it. I like how just unhinged this kid looks, just trying to capture all these insects. This is the title of the game. The wide open sky is running out of catfish. Not entirely sure what the game is actually about. It strikes me as a sort of Watam, Nobby Nobby Boy kind of thing, and that it's just weird. From the small bit of gameplay we saw, you're like free floating around the sky around this giant catfish that's down here, looking for like mysteries and other creatures and maybe adding to the catfish collection or something like that. But it's not clear. It's not clear what the actual gameplay is. There is a demo available, so maybe you can find out. I haven't played it, so I don't know. Getting into more definitely horror games, other than games that just seem like they're horror games. Forbidden Solitaire is as dumb as it sounds. It's an FMV thing, where like it's another kind of meta in-universe thing, not unlike Inscription. There's a lot of inspired by Inscriptions here. Where it's a game within a game, and the game is cursed, and if you play it, you'll die, and so on. But it's just fucking Solitaire. Anyway, it's an FMV inspired thing, so it's going to be unhinged. This is from the same developer behind Home Safety Hotline, which I think I've talked about before, but is essentially a SCP categorizing game. You have people calling you up and telling you, oh, this weird shit is happening in my house, and you have to like call them back and tell them what weird monstrosity is haunting their house and what to do about it. On the surface, it's just like a categorization thing. Find the features in what they're talking to him about, and process of elimination, deduce what creature it is. But that also had FMV segments to it. They're teaming up with another developer, but I don't recognize that developer, so I'm not sure what they've done. Quite a ride we've seen before. This is a kind of it's a little bit War of the Worlds. It's a little bit Pacific Drive. So the idea is it's like first person. You're on this bike. You are trying to cycle away from some creature that is hunting you down, and at certain points you'll need to stop off to either repair the bike or collect resources or stuff like that, and get back on the bike as fast as possible and keep pedaling away. And you have all these horrible things chasing after you, and you have a dog. Hopefully the dog doesn't get hurt, but anyway, no demo for that one, because I'm kind of interested in that, because I really liked Pacific Drive, and if it's something kind of similar, I would be interested. Benny Bash, I think on the surface, and I think they're going to have an issue with this, is that the art seems like it's a Puppy Playtime ripoff. And it isn't really. It's another meta game. It's a game within a game. You are playing the game Benny Bash, which is essentially Super Mario Bros. The first Super Mario. But if you die in the game, Benny comes to hunt you down in real life and kill you in the 3D game. So there's the 2D game where you play Mario and try to get as far as you can, inevitably die, and then there's the 3D game where you effectively have to run away from Benny. Not a whole lot of gameplay shown where you're running away from Benny. A lot of gameplay shown where he just catches you and kills you. But anyway, Video Ghastlies, I think we talked about this at a previous showcase. It's not quite clear what the game is, but it does seem like it is kind of you watching VHS tapes, and maybe the things in the VHS tape or in the film or whatever are getting out into the real world, and you'll have to deal with them. But there's no gameplay shown off though. Blue Ridge Hunting is kind of presented as a PS1 throwback kind of thing, but it is kind of hunting down and kind of categorizing like cryptids out in the like Appalachian area, so things like Mothman and the Sasquatch and stuff like that. But it has a definite like horror vibe. It's almost like a Phasmophobia kind of, but I think it's a little bit more structured rather than Phasmophobia's sort of proceduralness. I think this game is a little bit more like structured and scripted kind of thing. I feel like I've skipped a trailer. Oh yeah, there's Benny Bash. Okay, right. Anyway, yeah, so you can see like it's a Super Mario Bros. Type game, but if you fail to at the Super Mario Bros, Benny comes and kills you, and that's kind of the gist of it. And then it does have again like the inscription kind of thing of you getting up from the game and checking out puzzles in the area and that kind of thing. There's an interesting bit later where you are definitely seems like you're controlling Benny himself. So it's the 2D section here. Whether this is in the game or not, but it's like you're controlling Benny. That's outside the cabin that you're in now. And if you walk into the cabin and then you turn around and there's Benny and he kills you. Anyway. What was after that? Alright, Kid Bash. We haven't gotten there yet. Okay. Pedal Runner. It's kind of a slice of life thing where you are delivering like digital pets to people around the town or the village or the city or whatever. It's got a very strong like old school Game Boy Pokemon art style to it, but you're kind of like driving around on your moped, and it is very cute. Oddbat is it's almost a procedural platformer, but the thing is you can fly, so it's not really a platformer. But there is a sort of, or not a procedural, but a precision platform. So it's more like a precision flying game, I guess. But the idea is you're a bat, you're also a vampire, and you have to feed to keep up your health, but also you need to avoid enemies, and it is a little bit like navigating the environment so you can do all of those things and not get caught, kind of thing. Kid Bash Super Legend is kind of Mega Man, but what if Mega Man was like a claymation kind of thing? It looks really good, honestly. It's got a bit of like not the newer Kirby's, but it's almost like Kirby's Epic Yarn, Yoshi's Woolly World. I know they're not yarn, but it has that look to it, that feel to it, I guess. It's like 2.5D, but it's also like it's a toy almost. But yeah, it's clearly going for like Mega Man kind of thing to it. There's a bit of Kirby in there as well. One of the things you can do is that you can dual wield weapons, which is obviously something Mega Man could not do. Although I do think Kirby can, right? I think, like, if he inhales one person, eats them, and then inhales another, I think maybe that was a later edition, I don't know. Anyway, it looks pretty cool. Hopefully it does something a little bit different, because if it's just Mega Man with a different art style, then it's like we have Mega Man, though. What else are you doing? And then the final game was Dino Blade. So you may have seen this on Twitter, social media, whatever. Have you seen a dinosaur swinging a Buster Sword around the place? That was meant to just be a portfolio piece, but the response to it was pretty good, so they decided to just make it a game instead. So in Dino Blade, you control a sick-ass dinosaur with a sick-ass sword who is set on becoming the king of the battlefield. That's it. That's the gist of it. It kind of has like a spectacle action kind of thing. DMC in some ways. With other dinosaurs that has a scythe, and you're like, I think you're a Spinosaur. There's a T-Rex with a big fucking great axe and so on. It is very dumb. It is very silly, and I really, really want to play it. That's how, like, it's just, oof, got fucking bodied by that T-Rex. Anyway, that's Dino Blade. There's no release date or anything like that, because, again, remember, it wasn't supposed to be a game in the first place. Anyway, that was the SixOne showcase. There was also another one that was called Creature Feature. I have not had a chance to actually view that myself, so not entirely sure what was in that one. You might want to check that out yourselves. I've also included the SixOne Indie Showcase landing page, which is on Steam. You can see all of those games. All of them are available on Steam to wishlist and in some cases buy. And there's a couple of other games that are thrown in there that weren't at the showcase, but they're indies that I think have appeared at the showcase before. Things like Scarlet Deer Inn wasn't shown off, but I think it was there at the last year's one. Anyway, moving on. The third showcase was the Warhammer Skulls event, which is effectively the Warhammer video games showcase thing. And for the most part, I wasn't super interested in it, but there were a handful of things that I did like, so we'll get to them as we get to them. So Total War, Warhammer 3, more of that. It's DLC for it. Again, it's RTS, not really something I care about too much. Warhammer 40k Bolt Gun is getting a sequel, so Bolt Gun 2. From the looks of it, it is more of the same. What I had to say about Bolt Gun, which I think is on PlayStation Plus this month. It's a pretty old school boomer shooter. The beginning of the game is a lot of fun, but it doesn't start to do anything new, and the enemies you're encountering in the second half are just not really all that interesting. So if it can do something new, but if it's more of the same, I don't know if I'd be all that interested. Anyway, next year, at some stage, for Bolt Gun 2, Warhammer 40k, the Space Marine, the original, is getting a remastered edition, or the Master Crafted edition, and it is coming to Xbox, Game Pass, as well as PC on Steam. It is not coming to PlayStation, or at least it was not announced for PlayStation. Now, whether that is a case of them, I don't know, giving some sort of exclusivity to Xbox for Game Pass for a little while before it makes its way to PlayStation, or if they just don't have any intention of doing it, not clear. We don't know. All we know is they didn't mention PlayStation. They didn't mention Nintendo Switch either, but I don't think that was expected in the first place. Anyway, so yeah. Kind of annoying, honestly, but whatever. Rogue Trader has another story expansion and is adding some extra bells and whistles. I think there's a new character being added to it as well. Dark Heresy is the follow-up to Rogue Trader, so it's not like a sequel or anything, but it is from the same developer. It's the same kind of game. It's a turn-based, tactical kind of thing, RPG. like Rogue Trader, but this time it is set in with the Dark Inquisition, something like that. I don't really know Warhammer 40k lore. I assume these guys are. I assume that, well, there's no good guys exactly in Warhammer 40k, but they're the closest to it, I guess. I don't know. Not a whole lot of gameplay there. Hang on, let me see if I can find a gameplay bit. All right, that is, I think, gameplay. Anyway, it is like a turn-based thing, so if you played Rogue Trader, it's going to be something similar, but just set in a different part of the Warhammer 40k lore. That is, I don't think has a release date or anything, but that's coming to PlayStation at least. Anyway. Space Marine 2 is getting a Horde mode. There's also a racing game. That is, I mean, they're saying it's a racing game. It's not really. It's more of like a Destruction Derby, Twisted Metal thing. It's car combat. Actually looks pretty good, but it is like a live service thing, so I'm not gonna touch it, but it does actually look fun. Dawn of War is also getting a remastered definitive edition thing, but it's an RTS, so I'm not gonna touch it. Supremacy is another. I know it's like a mobile strategy thing, so even less chance of me touching it. Dark Tide is getting a new character and class. Mechanicus, I'm not sure. Mechanicus looks like an XCOM. It even says it's an XCOM thing. I haven't heard of the first one, but this is Mechanicus 2, so I'm thinking of checking out the first Mechanicus, because I like XCOM, but I don't like that XCOM 95% and you still miss. So it's like, if Mechanicus has that as well, I'm probably not going to jump into it. And I think that was it. Yeah. So the takeaways for me, at least, were Bolt Gun getting a sequel, because I did like Bolt Gun. It's just I would have liked if they had continued to keep it interesting, but it does feel like the second half of the game, they just go, okay, here's that was all the new stuff we had to show you, now here's more of the game. And it's, I don't think you need to be constantly adding new things, but I do think you need to change it up a little bit. They do add new enemies, but they're fucking annoying to fight, so it's, I don't know. Dark Heresy again. I've been waiting for Rogue Trader's post-game stuff to finish, so it has like 4 story expansions, and they've only gotten to the second one. So I'm waiting for the fourth one, which should be the last one, to jump into it, because it does seem like something I would like to play. Yeah, Space Marine 1's remaster not coming to PlayStation is kind of shit. Because I prefer to play on PlayStation. I have a PC that could play it, and that should be fine. But like, I would prefer to play it on like a couch and the TV, not in front of my PC desk. Anyway, actually not mentioned in Kotaku's article is there is another Bolt Gun game that was released for free on the same day. Words of Vengeance, which is essentially Warhammer 40k Bolt Gun, but touch typing instead. So it's like a Typing of the Dead kind of thing, which is very funny. Anyway, that's a freebie. I don't think you even need to own the first one. I think it's just free in general. Anyway, if you can type very fast, you'll have effectively the same experience. Right, anyway, moving on. Outside of those showcases, this game called Critical Shift, that is a tactics XCOM type thing that I think has some... I think it's got obviously like Cyborgs gone wrong, but I think that also has some element of The Thing to it. Anyway, this guy gets the drop on them pretty well, honestly. Like, you got him surrounded and he takes out like the whole team from his sniper rifle penis. Anyway, but it is a tactics game, but unlike XCOM where you are kind of dropped in and then you helicopter back to base and stuff like that, this is more of a you stay on site and there's like you have like story beat moments where you're talking and you're getting your gear together, healing people, resting up, swapping out teammates. And then you have like dropped into like combat scenarios and stuff like that. And they are like scripted combat sequences. There's no like proceduralness to it. I think XCOM has some element of randomization to it, whereas at themes like this game, it'll be essentially fighting. This is level 20. It's the same enemies you're always fighting at level 20 kind of thing. Anyway, I'm interested in it. Like, again, like I said, I liked XCOM. I just don't like how swingy it is, with, you know, how you can just lose the whole team because of one bad roll. You know, it's I think that was the element of it that I wasn't a big fan of. Anyway, it's Critical Shift, just announced, so there's no like release date or anything yet. Microsoft continuing to bring previously Xbox exclusives over to PlayStation, so now it's Hellblade 2. Senua's Sacrifice is making its way over to PlayStation at some stage. I think they just said in the summer. I don't think they gave a specific month or anything like that. In the trailer, the game director is kind of mentioning that Ninja Theory started off on PlayStation, you know, with Heavenly Sword, and then got gobbled up by Microsoft. So, like, this is our home and we're happy to bring it back or something, whatever. It's like Microsoft's paying you money to do it. Anyway, yeah, I liked the first one, despite it having not a whole lot of gameplay to it, and from what I've heard, the second one doesn't have a whole lot of gameplay to it either, but it is like a technical showpiece kind of thing, and I would like to see more of that. So summer at some point, whenever that is. Over on the Epic Games Store, free games this week. There's actually 3 games for free. Deliver at All Costs, which is a brand new game, which we'll talk about in the new releases, but it's free over on the Epic Games Store if you want to check it out. Sifu, the kind of roguelike, it's not exactly a time loop thing, martial arts thing from Slow Clap. It's very, very good. It's very, very hard. And I think was a free game on Epic before. It's also gotten a ton of post-game, post-launch content. It's like, yes, lots of new costumes, but there's also a ton of like new game modes, new arenas and stuff like that. And I think there's also some like tweaks to the combat, and you can make it much harder, but you can make it a little bit easier as well. And then the third game is Gig Apocalypse, which is a kaiju. I don't think it's a fighter game. I think you are just playing the kaiju and just wrecking the place. Or are you defending against them? No, you're the kaiju and you're wrecking the place. Okay, anyway, that's Gig Apocalypse. Monthly games. So it is coming to the end of May, which means Game Pass is getting its second wave for May. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Monster Train 2, I am not familiar with. Powerful beings, titans, taking over heaven. Makeshift alliance of angels and demons. Work together against the common foe. Command clans aboard the train. Embark on your journey to heaven. Defeat the titan. It doesn't say what kind of game it is. Okay, it's a sequel. I don't remember the first game either. Anyway, that is a brand new game. So that's day one with Game Pass. Creatures of Ava, I think has been on Game Pass before, but it was in Game Pass Ultimate, and now it's just being moved down to the standard tier. It is a creature collector, so like a Pokemon kind of thing. Stalker 2, again, similarly was a Game Pass Ultimate thing. It's now been moved down. The kind of survival first-person things drops you out in Chernobyl. Try not to die. Tales of Kanzera Zhao is a Metroidvania. It's pretty decent. Metroidvania that is set in a kind of futuristic, but also somehow in the past, African, like, fictionalized nation. I thought it was really good. Tom Clancy's Division 2, could have sworn that was already on Game Pass. Apparently not. But that's the... Is it not already free to play? Guess not. It's a live service RPG shooter thing, you know, one where it takes like 400 bullets to kill one enemy because they're stupid bullet sponges. Fun. To a T is the next thing from the Katamari Damacy guy. It's the game where you're stuck in a T-pose and you have to navigate your life stuck in a T-pose. It's very, very fun looking kind of thing. Metaphor ReFantasio is a JRPG from Atlas, it's people behind the Persona series. Got rave reviews last year, was very much a contender for Game of the Year. Didn't win it, but could easily have gone to Metaphor rather than whatever did win it last year. Not Baldur's Gate. What fucking won it last year? Astrobot. But it could easily have gone to Metaphor. Very, very good game. I need to put more time into it. Spray paint simulator, amazing. It's just Power Wash Simulator, but you're painting instead. That's it. That's all it is. I honestly can't wait to play it. Crypt Custodian is a top-down Metroidvania where you are sent to become a janitor in the afterlife because you made somebody mad. And you're not supposed to be a janitor, but they're making you a janitor, and your quest is effectively to not be the janitor of the afterlife. And Symphonia, I'm not familiar with. Awaken a musical realm, poetic platformer. Use the power of your violin with your platforming skills to gather an orchestra to bring the musical machinery of the world back to life. Okay, sounds like a platformer. As well as that second wave for Game Pass, they've also added 50 classic Activision games, and when they say classic, they mean old. Not necessarily good. Anyway, 50 classic Activision games have been coming to Xbox Game Pass. Retro Classics with Game Pass is what it'll be called. It'll be available to all of the tiers. It's not just an Ultimate thing, it's on all of the Game Pass tiers. This initiative is a step in our commitment to game preservation and backwards compatibility, allowing players to experience many timeless games on modern devices. If this was really about game preservation, you would make it free. And you would make it not locked to Game Pass, and you would make it accessible to PC, and you would make it possible to get all of these games individually. You're not doing any of that. Also, these games are so fucking old, you shouldn't have to pay for them. Anyway, is it good that they're making them available in the first place? Yes, but they could do a lot more. They could do a lot more. Anyway, we're talking about such classics as Pitfall. I mean, Pitfall is a classic, but it's also shit. Anyway, Grand Prix, Commando. Okay, Mech Warrior's good. The rest of them, though, I don't know. There's some real. I mean, there's some good games there, but there's some fucking terrible games on that list too. Anyway, they're planning for more than 100 titles from Activision and Blizzard to be added over time. This will be available for all Game Pass membership tiers, unless you're in Japan. For some reason it isn't, but everywhere else it seems to be available. Maybe it's a weird licensing thing. Those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? Well, there's a lot of new releases this week. So first up, we have Fantasy Life I, Girl Who Steals Time. This is a slice of life game from Level 5. Level 5 haven't put out anything in a good while, but Level 5 are the Professor Layton people. They make other things, but that's the thing they're probably best known for. They make some really good JRPGs as well, but they haven't in a while. Anyway, the idea with the Fantasy Life I is there's these series of jobs, 14 different jobs, 14 different classes, effectively, that you can swap to on the fly, which has a little bit of Final Fantasy 14 to it in some ways. But it is a bit like Stardew Valley, but also Legend of Zelda, but also fucking Overcooked by the looks of things, and a bunch of other things. It's a lot of like mini games, 14 mini games effectively, mushed into each other, and it is selling really well. Honestly, it's not doing like millions or whatever, but it wasn't expected to do millions. It's doing hundreds of thousands though, which again wasn't necessarily like it was expected to do it eventually, but not as quickly as it has done it. Let's put it that way. So hopefully things are, looking a little bit better for Level 5. Things had not been going well for them, and a lot of games have been delayed, so there's a reason why they haven't put out any new games in quite a while. So anyway, hopefully things are on the up for Level 5. Moving on, we've Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon, which is very much Oblivion. This was on early access for a good while, so its 1.0 release is out now. It's now available on console as well. I think it's on PlayStation and Xbox, and obviously on PC it was already early access available. There's a demo for it too. You're seeing mostly third person, but there is a first person vibe to it. It is very much Elder Scrolls. That's very much what they're going for. One thing I did like in the demo is King Arthur. It's The Fall of Avalon, Tainted Grail, right? It is a Knights of the Round Table myth thing. He speaks Irish. They don't tell you it's Irish, but the subtitles, it's Irish is what he's speaking. I thought that was fun. That was cool. How much of that actually carries through to the whole game? Probably not a lot, but it was nice. I liked seeing it anyway. The demo that I played, I made a really shit build. I didn't really get very far into it. I've been meaning to go back and try it out again. Anyway, but chances are if you like the Elder Scrolls and don't want to pay so much money for the Oblivion remaster, or have some issue with giving Microsoft any money, hey, Tainted Grail is there, and you don't already know all of these quests like the back of your hand. So that's something to look at. Anyway, moving on. Blades of Fire is the next game from Mercury Stream. It's either Mercury Steam or Mercury Stream. I forget which. So they're the guys behind Castlevania Lords of Shadow, which is what this seems to be taking inspiration from, shall we say. They also made Metroid Dread, most recent Metroid. So, they've got some pretty good development chops. So the idea with Blades of Fire is like you've embodied this sort of mythical god of the forge or something. And you are using that to create weapons and fight back against this tyrannical queen who has destroyed all steel in the world. Which is an interesting one. It's a real, I don't know, loophole that she's found. I guess we're not gonna outlaw violence or weapons or whatever. I'm just gonna ruin all steel in the world. So everything is made of iron now, and it's all really difficult to work with, and you can't really make great weapons out of it, and so on. So she's kind of using magic to subdue the people. But you're like Superman, God of the Forge, so you can make cool weapons, and you're fighting back against her, and so on. And she may be your sister. Possibly. I think she is. Or your daughter, or something. Some kind of family member, I think, is what's going on. I'm pretty sure she's the woman at the beginning of the trailer. I don't know. He looks a lot like her. What I've seen from reviews, the combat's not great. Or at least not. It's not that it's not great. It's that it's kind of basic, bit bare bones. It does have a kind of an interesting system in that the face buttons are the direction that you swing in, rather than you having a light attack, heavy attack, whatever. It's like the triangle attack is a downward attack, and the X button is an upward attack, and circle and square, or whatever you're playing on console, but just swing right, swing left, like that kind of thing. I don't know if it's the case if you pressed square and X, for instance, that you would do like a diagonal attack. I'm not sure that's how it works. What it has gotten praise for is the smithing mini game, where you make your own weapons, and it does look like it's pretty in-depth. It's certainly not a case of you just, collecting a bunch of items and then pressing the button to make the weapon. Like, there is an involvement of you swinging the hammer and flattening the blade and making an edge to it and so on. It's pretty in-depth, and it does look really interesting. Mercury Steam, not Stream. Mercury Steam. Anyway, that's Blades of Fire. It is very much like a AA thing, but I kind of interested to check it out. It's an interest, like I've always said before, you're doing something new and interesting, and I will check it out. Even if you don't do it well or accomplished, you're at least trying, so I'm gonna give it a shot. Anyway, moving on. Duck Detective, The Ghost of Glamping. We played the Duck Detective, The Secret Salami, the first game last year, and it was a fun deducting game. Yes, there's a K in deduction for that one. Anyway, The Ghost of Glamping is essentially the follow-up. It is very much a similar type of game. It's got a little bit of fill in the blanks, a little bit of ad-libs kind of thing. It's got a slightly, spooky vibe to it because it's ghosts this time around, but it's effectively the same thing. It's very funny. It's very cheesy. The stakes are extremely low. It's like The Secret Salami is about somebody stealing a sandwich. The stakes are not high. Anyway, but I liked the first one, so yeah, I'm gonna try out the second one as well. Kathy Rain 2 Soothsayer. It's a sequel to Kathy Rain. Kathy Rain was a kind of throwback to the very old point and click adventures, like Monkey Island, but also kind of like Broken Sword and some of the Sierra games. It's very much a throwback to that, and was very well received. Kathy Rain 2 is the follow-up to it. I've been meaning to try out the original game. I just haven't got, there's so many things on the fucking backlog, I just haven't got around to it. But anyway, I'll get to it at some point, and then there'll be a sequel for me to also have to wait fucking ages to get to before I can play it. A lot of new games this week. Linked Banner of the Spark. It's kind of this top-down brawler type thing, but it also has a bit of a... I don't know, I kind of feel like it has a bit of a Ratchet and Clank vibe to it. Maybe even a little bit of a Hi-Fi Rush vibe to it as well, because you do have this... Well, it's not musically based, but you do have like this bionic arm that you can make different weapons out of and stuff like that. I know that's nothing like Hi-Fi Rush, but whatever, I don't know, it has that vibe to it for me. But yeah, it's a top-down brawler that's like very colorful, very fun, like in a kind of cartoonish kind of way to it. A lot of different weapons and stuff like that. Anyway, Linked Banner of the Spark. Frog Legs. Frog Legs is actually a very short game. It's only like an hour long. You have all these different frogs, and they're doing different kind of games. So you have it's like a Doom style thing. Later on, there's literally Frogger, and I think at one point there's like a 3D puzzle thing, almost like the newer Resident Evil kind of games. Not to the same fidelity or anything like that, and you're also playing frogs. It's very dumb. There's a lot of puns. It's a very silly game. It's only like €2, something like that. Anyway. TMNT Tactical Takedown is, hey, what if we, did a throwback to the old Turtles brawler beat 'em ups, but we made everything also tactics instead. So you are effectively just playing as one turtle, and you swap between them as the story dictates. Which it works for them. And I think it's probably ultimately the better idea. I still think I would have liked to have seen more of a... It's not to say they couldn't do it, but like more of an XCOM where you have all 4 of them fighting as a party, and they all have different abilities and stuff like that. I think would have been more interesting. But maybe not, I don't know. But anyway, it seems to be pretty good. Out of Sight... it's not getting great reviews, but I like the idea, the concept at least. So you are this little girl, scary people in your house, but your vision, as you can see, is some issue with it. I'm sure they go into it in the game for why the little girl can't see, but she sees through the teddy bear, effectively. So your vision is from the teddy bear, but I think you still control the girl. I think. Entirely sure how the game plays. I get a feeling that the mechanic wears thin pretty quickly, is probably... Because it is still, at the end of the day, a cat and mouse horror thing. And I don't like them at the best of times. So, one that has a potentially very frustrating control mechanic, I can't imagine it goes down well. But yeah, it has an interesting... Again, it's an interesting idea. I do kind of want to check out to see how it works. Deliver at a cost, we said, is free on the Epic Game Store as well. I believe I think it's coming to Game Pass too at some point. Maybe not immediately, but Deliver at all costs is a kind of... Well, it's kind of as the name suggests, you're given a package to deliver and you need to deliver it at all costs. You go as fast as you can to get from point A to point B. The nature of the camera means you're not really going to be able to see what's coming ahead of you, so you just have to do your best to not crash into a bunch of shit. And it is very dumb. You're going to cause like significant amount of chaos. I'd imagine there's a lot of trial and error of you not seeing a bridge coming up and go flying off a cliff and stuff like that. Or that happening, crashing into oncoming traffic and so on and so forth. The last game, it's actually the one I'm probably most hyped for out of all of them, but it is a remaster, a re-release of Onimusha 2, Samurai's Destiny. So the original Onimusha already had its remaster, so Samurai's Destiny is getting its remaster. It is arguably the better one. It introduces like a new mechanic where you have NPC partners that can show up at various points in the game and help you fight back against the demons and evil creatures. It has like a gifting thing then alongside that where you can give them gifts, and the more gifts you give and the better those gifts are, the more likely they are to show up and so on and so forth. I'm amazed at how much of the game I remembered. So just watching a couple of Let's Plays of it, and it's like I'm saying the characters' lines before they say it, you know? It's like I'm remembering a lot of the of the game that I wouldn't think I would have remembered so much of it, but it is clearly deep in there somewhere. I very much really liked I liked all of the Onimusha games, so I think the second one is my favorite. Anyway, unfortunately though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So Randy Pitchford said something stupid. You know, I know. It's like, what else is new? It's a Tuesday, whatever. Borderlands 4's Randy Pitchford seeks to justify his $80 real fans comment. So what was the comment in the first place? Well, somebody posted under a Borderlands tweet or something like that, and they basically said, this game better not be $80. And Pitchford came back to basically say, real fans will find a way to make it work. They'll find a way to get their hands on a copy of the game no matter what the cost. A little bit tone deaf there, Randy. A little bit. You know, it does have shades of the PS3's. Was it Ken Kutaragi who said it? But that you'll want to get a second job so you can afford the PS3. Like, it did not go well for him. It is not going well for Randy. So there was significant backlash of, what the fuck, Randy? That is you want people to go into debt just to afford a toy kind of thing. And anyway, there was a lot of blowback. So he decided, I won't just, you know, bow my head and just let this blow over. I'll decide to post through it. So he comes back to say in a video, for some reason, on one level, we've got a competitive marketplace. The people who make those choices want to sell as many units as possible, and they want to be careful about people who are price sensitive. So there are some folks who don't want to see prices go up, even the ones deciding what the prices are. Randy, the people deciding what the prices are want them to be as high as they can possibly get away with. Anyway, other folks are accepting the reality that game budgets are increasing and there's tariffs for the retail packaging. Whose fault is it that game budgets are increasing? Well, he tells on himself later on, but it's the publishers themselves are the reason. They're using the excuse of, we deliberately inflated the budget of our game and now we need to pay back the price on it. They're not going to tell you that part. They're just going to say, oh, it's just a natural consequence. Nothing we could have done about it. We couldn't have made a smaller game. We couldn't have made a more focused game that doesn't have hours of bloat in it. No. We needed a budget that is drastically too high and has to account for the fact that we can't make decisions and that management changes their mind every 2 seconds. And now we want to turn a game that was supposed to be single player into a big live service thing. That's not going to balloon the budget. And so on. Anyway, yes, we want to get more resources so we can make a bigger and better game. So they want to make a bigger and better game, which means bigger budget, which means more pricing. You can't complain, Randy, about not wanting to push the price up, but also complaining about video game budgets, and then also literally stating that you are putting the budget up yourselves. He says it here somewhere. We had the budget for the next Borderlands, but we could more than double the budget and feel confident. That was for Borderlands 4. Now again, he doesn't set the budget. Take-Two set the budget because they own Gearbox. But he's the one deliberately pushing up the budget. Which is what he is saying. That's why games are $80 or going to become $80 and so on. No one is telling you to do this. No one is telling you to make Borderlands 4 a 200-hour game. It could be smaller. You did it with the pre-sequel. You can make a shorter game. It does not need to go on forever. Doesn't need to. You don't need to do this anymore. He continued, for some reason, and then claimed he was addressing the blowback and then decided not to address it in any way whatsoever. In seriousness, though, nobody likes being taken for granted, and it was not my intent. That isn't an apology. That's, I'm sorry you feel bad. I'm humbled by the love and support everyone has shown. There was none. It was just vitriol. Anyway, the team, as we push hard to get this game in your hands, as we push hard, I imagine the developers are like, shut the fuck up, Randy. We want people to actually play the game. They're crushing it, and I can't wait for everyone to play what's going to be the best Borderlands ever. Regardless of where the price lands, it's going to be worth it. And then some. Shut up. Anyone who was in Gearbox's marketing was just put a fucking gag on Randy. Anyway, going back to the budget thing, they're the reason the budget is up, so you can't use that as an excuse, because literally it is in your control to have made a smaller game. You could have done it. You could have pitched a cheaper game. I imagine the management would love to have a cheaper game for you to make. They love cutting costs, right? Isn't that their whole deal? I think the initial thing of him saying real fans will find a way to get their hands on a copy of the game no matter how much it costs, it could also be read as piracy. But also in his comment, he was talking about how he worked a second job after... no, not a second job. He worked a job in the mall making ice cream sundaes or something like that, and he was able to afford something, which is of course a big boomer fucking thing, but also completely discounting the fact that inflation is a thing and that wages haven't gone up with inflation. They have stagnated for quite some time. Your job at the ice cream vendor thing would not even afford you the ice cream at that vendor at this point. Anyway, Andy Pitchford continues to be a fucking idiot. Moving on. Speaking of fucking idiots, Bungie leaders feared Destiny 2's fancy glowing Trials gear would kill the microtransactions, according to sources. So this is coming from Destin Laguerre's YouTube. Destin Laguerre is a former editor, I think, with IGN. And raises a number of allegations from a bunch of anonymous former employees. So obviously we have to take it. It's anonymous former employees. Take a grain of salt and so on, but it does kind of go with a lot of the things we've been hearing about Bungie. Anyway, apparently staff once proposed a Destiny subscription model, but were vehemently shut down by its leaders because they didn't want to... They want people to keep buying expansions, essentially, and keep buying microtransactions. They didn't want to swap to a subscription model because that would actually end up with less money. Way better for the consumer. Not so good for the bottom line, though. Anyway, there were also claims about toxic, unaccountable management, and that the company's culture has changed course since being acquired by Sony, becoming a lot more corporate focused. So sources in the video accused the company's leadership of being arbitrary, high-handed, and overpaid, which is effectively every video game publisher at this point. But these are developers; they should know better. Anyway, shutting down suggestions from creatives in meetings, which is a lot of the subscription model kind of stuff. It's not all doom and gloom. There were positive comments about some of the former people, like the former CTO, Luis Villegas, former community manager, there's great game director, and so on. A lot of the vitriol is reserved for human resources, who they believe are just covering up for the missteps and bad behavior of leaders. Just kind of what HR does, guys. They protect the company, and protecting the company does occasionally mean protecting the higher-ups in the company. It's shit. I know it's shit, but that is the job. Anyway, but it's also alleged that they were way more concerned about securing the company's acquisition by Sony than they were about dealing with bad behavior of management. And the reason for that was that they were essentially due a $5 million payout if the acquisition went ahead, which it did. So presumably they got that payout. Anyway, they're also alleging that their social media feeds were monitored and that they were warned against promoting themselves as Bungie employees, which is also a very shitty corporate tactic that you do see a lot. Don't post anything bad about the company on your social media feeds, but also don't say that you work at the company. What? Anyway, also talking about some leaders who are difficult to work with have now been moved over to the Marathon reboot, which is also probably why the Marathon development isn't going great. However, this has left people with much less game dev experience in charge of Destiny, which I think is obvious, really, for anyone who's been paying attention to it. Anyway, the studio's internal language has grown more corporate since the acquisition by Sony. They no longer talk about games and players. They instead talk about products and customers instead. One aspect of this corpo thinking was a disagreement over one Destiny set of armor, the Trials of Osiris PvP armor. So it does have some mechanic in it that parts of the armor light up, and the lighting changes depending on how well you're doing in the PvP mode. And if you get a bunch of wins in a row, it has this really cool light effect or something like that. Cool for the player, right? And it gets them to keep playing the mode so that they can get the effect and so on. It's a nice feedback thing. It's a nice status symbol, I guess, amongst the community and what have you. But management were super against it. Now, as I understand it, management lost this argument, but they were against it in the beginning because they were worried about its enduring appeal, i.e. people would continue to wear it because it looked cool. And it also showed off that you were good at the PvP stuff. And that they almost blocked the expanded Trials accessory glow effect to protect the Eververse sales. If you're not familiar, the Eververse is the in-game microtransaction shop. So they felt that this armor would be so cool that people would stick and just use that armor and not buy any of the new stuff. Which, as an abstraction, it is an interesting idea for a game that is not Destiny, right? But like a hypothetical game that is a free-to-play live service thing that uses microtransactions to fund itself. And those microtransactions are cosmetics and what have you. How do you make free armor that is compelling enough that people keep playing the game and keep collecting that armor and using it, but you also want it to be not so enticing that they stick with it and don't go to the microtransaction shop to buy nicer armor? You know, how do you make where's the trade-off for I can't make this too cool, because if it's too cool they won't buy it. But if if I don't make it cool enough, people won't play the game. So I don't think people would play Destiny as much if the costumes were like a grey blob, you know? Okay, maybe some people would wear that just for the laugh, but for the most part, if they were just like untextured, you know, unfitted, no animations, whatever, it's just sackcloth, effectively, virtual sackcloth, they're not going to keep playing the game. So that has to be like cool enough that people will keep playing it, but not too cool that it overshadows the cosmetics shop. And from like a theoretical standpoint, it's an interesting thought experiment, but the real knock-on effect is you're fucking over the vast majority of your players who are the free-to-play side of it. Anyway, the logic of a free-to-play shooter that needs you to keep topping up your DLC wardrobe to make more money. So they didn't want to... They were worried that this Trials of Osiris armor would be so compelling that people wouldn't buy the microtransaction shit. But they're forgetting that, one, it was PvP armor, so already significant chunk of your player base aren't playing it. And then they only got that effect if they were really good at it. This is, again, a very small number of players, so it was never really going to overshadow it, but it does point to their thinking that they were less thinking that, oh, that's a cool king we can give our players, instead of, no, this will affect our money. Anyway, assuming all of this is legitimate reporting, again, we don't know if it's true, but from what we have heard from Bungie already, with them stealing artists' work to use in Marathon, good old boys at the top of Bungie's leadership, massive layoffs after they were acquired by Sony, and so on. It seems legit. Anyway, moving on. People jumping ship. So Avowed game director joins Netflix games developer Night School Studio. Night School Studio are the people behind Oxenfree. They were acquired by Netflix in just before the pandemic, I think. Anyway, so Avowed's game director Kari Patel has decided to leave Obsidian after 12 years, something like that. I think she's been working there. Yeah, there's 12 years at Obsidian. Oh, sorry, almost. So not 12 years. Anyway, it's decided to move to Night School Studio, also as a game director, so it's somewhat of a lateral move. However, so ordinarily this wouldn't be like a big news story necessarily. Like Carrie Patel did good work. I think it's just later on it's mentioned she did a lot of work on Pillars of Eternity, and then did some work on the Outer Worlds, became a game director for the expansion pack to the Outer Worlds, and then was obviously game director on Avowed, and has now moved on to Oxenfree, or not Oxenfree, Night School Studios. We don't know what their next game is. But the concerning thing is that Netflix, as much as they're saying they want to be the Netflix of games, they have a very funny way of going about it. So only a few months ago, they laid off a ton of employees at Night School Studios. So yes, there's a vacancy, I suppose, but the whole point of that was to cut costs. Presumably those costs are still there, so how they're able to hire people. It's a bit shit to lay off a bunch of people and then also hire right afterwards. It is also a union busting kind of tactic as well. So you lay off a bunch of the problematic employees and then hire some of the other employees at lower rates. And maybe the people you laid off aren't able to find a job, and you offer them their old job back at less money. They might be in a financial situation that they need the money. Anyway, it is a very shitty practice. Anyway, Netflix, at the end of 2021, did have a concerted expansion into game development-ish. Maybe they acquired a bunch of developers, basically, and then had them make their games available on a Netflix subscription. As for actually developing their own games, not so much. They did have a AAA studio at one point where they poached a bunch of leadership from a lot of different developers, like former Bungie people, former Blizzard people, stuff like that, but then shut down the studio after like 2 years. They never released a game. And I kind of feel like the same thing is going to happen here. Because again, just had a ton of layoffs at this studio. I don't know. They've also changed their executive team fairly recently, so maybe they've had the change of leadership. They're also getting a change of direction. Maybe. Like, hope it works out for them. This is really more of a something to keep an eye on than anything else. Embracer, those fuckers, shake up its gaming division. The Lord of the Rings group is going to be rebranded. Coffee Stain is going to be spun off. So, we may recall Embracer Group did a lot of acquisitions right after COVID, over a long COVID, bought a lot of companies, a lot of developers, and from the sounds of it, did it all with money they didn't have, as they were relying on a cash injection from the Savvy Games Group, which is the Saudi royals investment arm, effectively, and that money never came. They backed out of the deal, and Embracer were then very much in the hole for a lot of debt, so they had to sell off a lot of things, laid off loads of people, shuttered a lot of games, shuttered a lot of studios. Of all of the game layoffs of the last few years, Embracer is like a significant chunk of it. So as part of the restructuring, CEO got to keep his job, and he's going to do this restructuring instead. They were going to split themselves into 3 different groups. Asmodee, which as I believe now has actually been sold off, but at the time wasn't. Coffee Stain and Friends, and Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends. Great names, honestly, really great names. That was the plan. It is still kind of the plan. As I said, Asmodee is largely its own thing now. I'm not sure it's even affiliated with Embracer anymore. So Middle Earth and Friends, or Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends, is going to be renamed to Fellowship Entertainment. This is effectively handling their like really big, like AAA IPs. So unsurprisingly, Lord of the Rings, but also things like Tomb Raider, Metro, Kingdom Come Deliverance, Dead Island. That's all going to be under Fellowship Entertainment. Way more than that. Fellowship Entertainment includes developers such as this fucking long list. It's a lot. There's a lot of them there. Anyway, more than 40 other 40 other companies on top of all of these. Do you think you're a little too big? think you might want to split that up even further, but okay. Then Coffee Stain was meant to be a kind of free-to-play, community-driven indie things, as well as like some AA type games and so on. So Coffee Stain is the group behind Goat Simulator. And then in that group as well, there is the developer behind Deep Rock Galactic. And there's one more. It's Tuxedo Labs, but I don't remember what game. I think they're Factorio? Maybe? I'm not sure. Anyway, it's those three, and I think there's like some smaller developers in there now. Anyway, we're really proud of everything we've built. Really? We're really proud of everything we built as part of Embracer? Are you sure? Are you sure about that? Even all of the layoffs and the shuttering and complete mothballing of a bunch of IPs. You're proud of that? Okay. Grateful for the support and trust we've received over the years. I don't know about that. Anyway, we can now focus even more on what we do best. Ruining? Ruining companies? I don't know. Supporting our developers by laying them off. Okay. Staying close to our communities and building an even brighter future for Coffee Stain. Alright, well this is for Coffee Stain specifically, I guess. They weren't responsible for all of the layoffs. It's this shithead. Where is he? Lars Wingfors. He's the real guy. Coffee Stain Group has incredible talent, IPs, and communities. Yep, that's what I want to talk about when I'm talking about a video game company, about their IPs. Fuck's sake. It has been a true recipe for success, because I wasn't involved in any way whatsoever. Anyway. What the fuck does Tuxedo Labs make? It's going to annoy me. I need to check. Tuxedo Labs. No, Labs. Oh, Teardown. Sorry, Teardown is them. Anyway. Moving on. Okay, so this is kind of... It's not exactly news, but I have a lot of time for Shuhei Yoshida. Former PlayStation boss says stupid money crippled the games industry. Now, this is not news, but it is, you know, it is... Is it good to hear it? I don't know. It is confirming, I guess, to hear about, affirming, maybe, to hear it from someone who was head of a major developer, publisher, platform owner for like 30 years. To hear that, yeah, what everyone is saying is true. Like, it is very much just there was way too much money thrown around the pandemic by idiots. And this is why all the layoffs happened, effectively. So he was speaking at Gamescom Latam, or Latin America, and talking about how the industry can become more stable, but he claimed that this would require the biggest players and investors to stop treating the market like a golden goose, which is very much what they've been doing. We're going to pump all of our money into making the next Fortnite, and that will just make us money forever and ever and ever. Ignoring the fact that it has worked for one company. And only one company, and it is the Fortnite, guys. Stop trying to make Fortnite. Just make a new game. Just do the thing. Do the thing you're supposed to be doing. Anyway, what we've been seeing for the last 2 years is just the adjustments to the misjudged spending by so many companies during the COVID days. This is, again, what we've been talking about a lot from the mergers and acquisition spree afterwards, is that money or credit was really easy to get during COVID. It was like 0% interest. It was effectively free money. And companies used that to get really big. They acquired a lot of companies merged, stuff like that. Embracer did the thing with $2 billion that it didn't have, and so on. Unfortunately, for them, it didn't stay free money forever. The rates started to go back up, and they couldn't pay those debts off because games take a long time to make, and they had to make the money somehow, or they had to cut their costs somehow so that they could free up money to pay their debts and etc. That's where all the layoffs came from, basically. Many companies and even the analysts believed that the crazy growth during the pandemic would continue. They overinvested and overhired, and they started too many projects, but after COVID, there was a lot more ways for people to entertain themselves, so the growth slowed down. So during lockdown, video game spending went up quite a lot because people had fucking nothing else to do, basically. Similarly, subscription services for things like Netflix and whatever also went up. Because people were locked inside and they had to entertain themselves. So that's how they did it. Problem was, when they were no longer locked inside, not only did spending go back to what it was, it went lower than what it was. And it went lower because people were so fucking sick of being locked up that they wanted to do literally anything else. So they weren't spending the money that they would ordinarily have been spending on video games, on in-home entertainment, we'll say. So they're expecting this growth to keep going. This is the textbook short-sighted Wall Street thing of we're only going to look ahead like 1 week. We're not even going to look ahead at all. We're going to look at what it looks like right now and assume it's going to keep going that way. And it didn't, predictably. Anybody could have told you that. Anybody could have told you that lockdown will end eventually. People are going to go outside. They're not going to be spending as much money on the video games anymore. Anybody could have told them that. And yet, somehow, we didn't see it coming. Anyway, the stupid money that helped spark that age of overinvestment has departed the video game industry in search of the next big thing. So again, as I have said many times, the people who are making the decisions and have the money in the video game industry don't actually play video games. They don't necessarily like them. They don't necessarily dislike them. That's not why they're here. They're here to make money, and that's it. Their hobby is money. And they're going to go somewhere else for their hobby now, which is private equity, probably, at this point. They don't care. They're going to go to the thing that makes money. They're not there for the art, we'll say. And I guess, is that a hippie, I guess, mentality to have, that you should only be in there to further the art? I guess, but also, like, fuck off. Go back to Wall Street if all you care about is the money. Can we go back to, like, the old... Well, maybe not. It's probably not a good idea. But go back to the ye olde way of where artists had patrons, and the patrons just paid them to continue doing their art. That was... like, yes, they would obviously pay them to do specific art every now and again, but for a lot of the time, it was just, I will pay you to live so that you continue doing your art. And that was it. And that they could say that they did that. Really, the state should be doing that. But anyway, moving on. Let's not get into socialism. Investing in portfolios rather than pinning all of their financial hopes on a handful of gargantuan projects with no margin for error. So this is saying, how can we get to a more sensible, sustainable video game industry? And his philosophy, and had been his philosophy for a very long time, you've seen it from how Sony courted a lot of indies near the end of PS3, the beginning of the PS4, when he was head of it, that they would make small games. You know, they would make things like Eco, the original Gran Turismos, stuff like that, that were not really big games. Very small. Like Tokyo Jungle is a Sony first-party thing, and it's a very short game, but it's a very dumb and fun game. And now what are they making? Giant open-world things that take 1 million years to develop. That's not sustainable. That's all your eggs in one basket. I think he says something similar to it, but it's like making a handful of gargantuan projects that have no margin for error, like a delay, as we're seeing, because they've decided to stop making all of those live service games. That Sony has a empty calendar of game releases because they're so reliant on their giant games now, that they don't have smaller ones that they can put out in the middle. It's why they started doing things like Miles Morales for Spider-Man, or whatever the expansion for Ghost of Tsushima was, the island one, like that kind of thing. Just taking the assets they had and making like a smaller experience thing, because it had to fill the gap that wasn't there from the small games that they would have had if they didn't fucking shutter all of their studios. Anyway, what big companies should do is invest in a portfolio of titles, because if they just invest in a small number of titles, it's a huge risk. I mean, this isn't even like novel advice or anything. This is the basics of don't put all your eggs in one basket, because if you drop the basket, you'll break all your eggs. Like, this should be obvious. And even when you invest in existing successful franchises, because people's tastes will change. They don't want to play the same game forever. This is why live services are going to have a problem, because they are the same game and they assume it's going to be the same game forever. Like, as much as people are saying, or not people, as much as upper management and a lot of these publishers are looking at Fortnite and they're seeing that it fucking prints money or whatever, even that isn't as popular as it used to be. You know, Roblox is more popular now on that. Overwatch for a while used to print money, and again, they decided to try to make, a lot of developers decided to try to make hero shooters and what have you. People got bored. They moved on to something else. By the time you decide to jump on the bandwagon, you are already too late. You know, people's tastes change. They get tired of the same fucking thing. It's why we get things like superhero films. People were getting tired of them. There's too many of them. It's like a new one every month kind of thing. Or when everyone was bringing out GTA clones, we're getting bored of them. Every game was becoming a big open world thing. It's too much. Too many of them in one go, you're going to get tired of it. Even if you eat food that you really like, but if you're having it literally every day for every meal, you are going to get tired of it after a while. But a lot of video game executives seem to think that that isn't the case. More short-sightedness is that people like Thing, so they will like Thing forever. Let's keep making Thing. They're not machines. It doesn't work that way. But what can you say? They're lizard people. They don't understand human beings. Anyway, and a point that he did make later on, and I do agree, is that sometimes limitation is really helpful. Necessity is the mother of invention is another way of saying that. It's just basically, if you don't have the giant budget to make the game, try to make the game anyway and make the concessions where you have to. You see this a lot more in older games, because older games did not have one, they didn't have the budget, definitely not. But two, they also didn't have the time, and they didn't have the memory in the literal machine itself to hold a lot of things. Now memory isn't even a concern. You could see the ridiculous download sizes for things like Call of Duty or what have you. 100 gigabytes, lol. No, that was not possible in the Nintendo, Super Nintendo days. You know, there's a reason they're called 32 bits and 64 bits and what have you. The memory footprint was tiny, and you weren't able to download anything to add to the hard drive in the machine because it didn't fucking have one. For one case, everything was on the cartridge, and they had to make it all fit. And whatever concessions they had to make it all fit, they did. I don't remember the exact way it's broken down, but there's something about how Metroid was made, that it is using the back half of the cartridge, and there's something about how Super Mario was made, it's that it's using the front half of the cartridge, or it might be the original Legend of Zelda. There's something about it where the two games can almost coexist on a slightly larger cartridge or something like that. There's another thing about how Mario in the original Super Mario Bros. Is 4 bits or something like that, or he's only a couple of pixels, and that can be encoded into a very small, tiny amount of memory. If we go a little bit older, we move into the PlayStation. Games came on multiple discs, which is one way they got around it. Well, get around it exactly. The game was so big they had to do that. But they had pre-rendered backgrounds. Resident Evil uses pre-rendered backgrounds. They still look pretty good, honestly. But they had to do that because if they had done a 3D background, it just would not have... it wouldn't have looked as good, but memory-wise, it likely wouldn't have fit. Again, also a trope of Resident Evil, the tank controls and so fixed camera angles and so on, was to have a floating camera would have made very difficult. And they wouldn't have been able to do pre-rendered backgrounds in that case, so they were locked into the fixed camera angles, which was a style at that point. And then the loading door. The classic Resident Evil loading door. You go up, you press the button, you get like a first-person shot of the door, and the door opens. Oh, scary, spooky, we don't know what's on the other side. That was so they could load the next room, because they couldn't keep both rooms in memory. Technology improved over time. Like disc streaming was eventually invented in and around the time of Soul Reaver, which was a big deal for that it didn't have loading screens. But a ton of technical hurdles had to be overcome to figure that out. And if you don't have those hurdles, if you can just money bash through it, you don't get that kind of innovation. You don't get optimization efficiencies. You start seeing fucking Call of Duty's ridiculous download sizes, but also just not optimizations. A lot of relying on stuff that's already done, not a whole lot of new things happening. It's why you see most of the innovation happening in the indie scene, because they have limitations. They have a vision of the game they want to make. They largely don't have the money to do that, so they have to try to figure out how to get as close to it as they can. And if you don't have to rely on that, if you don't have to figure out how to get around these things and you can just throw money at it, then you're not going to see any real innovation. Anyway, this kind of advice was echoed by Nicholas Doucet at the, probably said that name wrong, GDC 2025, this guy behind Astrobot, game director, to basically say that, yeah, make small games. A lot of the choices we made with Astrobot could be labeled as AA or maybe lacking in ambition, like the size of the team, the size of the game, there's no text, there's no voice, it's not an open world. That doesn't matter. We made a game that made people really happy, and it was probably the simplicity a lot of players made time for, and he was fucking right. There's so many reviews, people doing Let's Play, so much of them were saying, they just don't make them like this anymore. There's fun, and we're not having like 100 different jobs to do all at once. A lot of it was like, yeah, it's a throwback to like old platformers, but also those old platformers were good, and largely it's because they were simple. Anyway, we're gonna continue on. Some of it is fallout from some stories that we looked at previously. So this first one is from last week, where we had the AI Darth Vader who was talking about mommy milkers and so on. Anyway, they've been sued. It's probably unsurprising, but they've been sued by SAG-AFTRA due to unfair labor practice complaints. Sorry, they haven't been sued. A complaint has been made against them, and they may end up getting sued. So anyway, it didn't take long for players to get NPC Vader to say curse words and slurs and a bunch of other horrible things. 3 days later, SAG-AFTRA filed an unfair labor practice complaint with the National Labor Relations Board, which was aimed at Llama Productions, who are the signatory company for Epic. And it's a bit of a weird kind of legalese thing, but they are effectively the legal arm of Epic. But yeah, it's not for the reason you might think. So it's not just because Vader was a generative AI thing. It's because they didn't tell them ahead of time. So it's not because Fortnite is using AI to give Vader a voice exactly. More that the claims are that Epic replaced a bargained union voice work with the AI without notice, which is against the terms of their union agreement, violates the union agreement, and therefore is a workers' rights problem. Within the past 6 months, the employer, Epic, by its agents or representatives, failed and refused to bargain in good faith with the union by making unilateral changes to terms and conditions of employment without providing notice to the union or the opportunity to bargain, by utilizing AI-generated voices to replace bargaining unit work on the interactive program Fortnite. So the thing is that there are people who do Vader's voice, and they do like approximations of James Earl Jones and so on, and they're meant to be included in any kind of work, that if they're under the union, they should be given right of first refusal. You shouldn't be using an AI to do it. And they had that agreement already in place with Epic. They signed up for it and then decided to just not fucking do it. So that's the complaint, basically. SAG-AFTRA says that we celebrate the right of our members and their estates to control the use of their digital replicas and welcome the use of new technologies to allow new generations to share in the employment of these legacies and renowned roles. It's not a great stance for you guys to have, but okay. However, we must protect our right to bargain terms and conditions around use of voices that replace the work of our members, including those who previously did the work of matching Vader's iconic rhythm and tone in video games. So like a human being could have done it. You agreed to give a human being that position if it came up, and they didn't. Anyway, as pointed out last week, James Earl Jones' estate is aware that the voice was used. They gave their blessing to do so. This isn't a case that Fortnite did it without. They're not stealing the copyright of James Earl Jones' Darth Vader voice. Like, they gave the agreement to do it. The problem is it's violating a union agreement that Fortnite have, or that Epic has with SAG-AFTRA. Whether anything will come of this, don't know. It's up to the Labor Relations Board to make a determination on whether this has to go to court or whether there's a fine or what. But again, considering the administration in the US right now, they're not exactly pro-worker. Moving on. Speaking of the current US administration, years later, the FTC has finally dropped its fight against Microsoft's Activision Blizzard deal. So recently, they lost their appeal to the Ninth Circuit to basically say that Microsoft buying Activision was giving them a monopoly on some of the more popular video games like Call of Duty, that they could make that exclusive to the Xbox, which would block out PlayStation players, and PlayStation is a sizable chunk of the game playing market. This is effectively a monopoly, etc., etc. The court said they failed to basically show any of that. The FTC failed to show that Microsoft would have prevented rival companies from gaining access to Call of Duty after acquiring Activision Blizzard. It also dismissed the argument that Microsoft would make Activision games exclusive to the Xbox. Now, as it turns out, they didn't do that, and as it turns out, Microsoft, or more specifically Xbox's finance situation, because they spent so much to acquire Activision and there was no fucking way they would make that kind of money back anytime soon, if they had kept things exclusive, that they are essentially somewhat forced to get their games out to as many platforms as they can. So in some ways, it would have been financially a bad move to keep things like, it's bad to keep them exclusive anyway, but that's really more from a consumer standpoint. But in this case, because Xbox doesn't have as big a market share of video game consumers as Sony does, as Valve does, and so on, that keeping those things exclusive is keeping it to a much smaller block of players. And because we are far enough into the console generations that people aren't going to buy the other console at this point, they would effectively just not sell as much. And that's usually a hit you take for making something exclusive, but the idea is you get enough of these exclusives together, you'll entice people to come over and buy your console and jump into your ecosystem. That's not going to happen because we're too far into the console generation, really. Realistically, this is when you do it. You announce a lot of your exclusives when you're launching the console, so people have an idea of it. Anyway, the other issue from that standpoint is $69 billion to acquire Activision, which was at the time the games industry's biggest ever deal. And I don't know why I said at the time. It is still the games industry's by a significant margin. Call of Duty all by itself does not make anywhere close to that kind of money per year, per whatever. Even if you include all of them, they don't make that kind of money. There was no way they were making back that money for Microsoft. Daddy, in this case. Daddy is like, you spent 69 billions of my dollars. When am I going to get that back? And Xbox is, not sure. So, yes, pushing their games out to multiple platforms, making Game Pass as attractive as they possibly can, is their attempt to, in some way, in any way, recoup all of that money. Anyway, going back to the original story, the Commission has determined that the public interest is best served by dismissing the administrative litigation in this case. I mean, arguably yes, but unless you're going to go after somebody else, where you're just going to sit on your hands and do nothing. And again, considering the current administration, I think they are going to sit on their hands and do nothing. Anyway, speaking of the current administration, again, Trump administration cuts funding for the Strong Museum of Play. Great. We were talking about this museum last week, where they have the World Video Game Hall of Fame, They're talking about how they added a bunch of games, GoldenEye, Quake, something, I can forget what the other ones were. For some reason, The Last of Us is on it. They've had their funding cut, so a $500,000 shortfall because they're no longer getting 2 grants. They were going to get grants from the National Endowment of the Humanities and the Institute of Museum and Library Services, which have both been gutted by the firings of a bunch of federal agencies by the shithead who owns Twitter. So yes, these have been challenged and it's unconstitutional and so on and so forth. But the point is, right now, they're not getting the money. So it was meant to fund some upcoming exhibits. The Museum of Play isn't just for video games. They also do like toys and stuff like that. So it was going to be game shows in America. It was going to be one exhibit. And there's going to be like toy catalogs. There's going to be another exhibit and so on. Part of the funding also went to the Video Game Hall of Fame. So that's not getting its funding anymore and so on. So the museum's management had to say that neither grant affects the regular operating budget of the museum. So the museum's not going to close anytime soon, but its ability to bring in like new exhibits and stuff like that, that's going to be hampered. Despite the funding setback, the museum still intends to complete those 2 projects, though the size and scope and timeline will have to be adjusted. The funding gap isn't closed through other means, including donations, other grants, and possibly industry support. So yeah, like they want to continue doing these 2 projects, the game show one, the toy catalog one. But unless the funding comes in, they won't be able to. But the regular operating budget is still fine. So like I said, the museum's not going to close. Yes. But its ability to bring in like new exhibits, and since this is the video game side of things, its ability to add to the Video Game Hall of Fame will be restricted significantly. A lot of this is due to no. But yeah, I think the rest of this article just goes on to explain what is happening. I guess with the anti-DEI stuff that's going on in the federal agencies, all of the tariffs that have made video games a lot more difficult to make, and the consoles in particular to build and ship and so on. The ESA, the lobbying arm of the video game industry, has basically warned that video game prices are going to go up because of tariffs and so on. And then, of course, there's the Heritage Foundation, the shithead supreme, really. Initiative that proposes cutting labor law enforcement, civil rights protections, and beyond, which is obviously great for the video game industry. Anyway, last couple of things. So happening in the community, a Lego fan game that had been in development for 8 years has been shut down. So it's in development for almost a decade, has only just been recently cancelled by the Lego group, just before they were about to launch a demo. So the past 8 years, a growing group of fans known as Team Kanohi, I assume that's a Bionicle thing, have been developing their dream Bionicle game, The Masks of Power, but have been forced to stop after Lego demanded it. So this is kind of, yes, it's in Lego's power to like enforce their IP and their copyright and so on, but from the sounds of it, they had been doing everything that Lego wanted to distinguish it as a fan game and not affiliated, not an official thing, and then Lego shut it down anyway, which is very shit. Anyway, we had planned to shadow drop the demo on the 10th of August this year. Fortunately, this will no longer happen. The Lego Group has asked our team to shut down the project in its entirety and remove the game from the public eye. So they did show off like a 2-hour video of like what the demo would have been. It's pretty impressive, honestly. So why did the Lego Group shut them down? There's not really clear why exactly, like the exact reason. The dev team said that they've been in contact with the company for years and have followed all of the rules surrounding fan-created content. They allege that Masks of Power was starting to look like it was an official Lego game, despite them putting out disclaimers and everything to say that this is not an official product, etc., etc. We suspect is that our project was too easy to mistake for an official product, which is one way to say, oh, our game just looks too good. But like, yeah, it could actually easily... it could easily pass for like an official Lego game. At the time of writing, searching Bionicle game on Google lists the Steam page for Masks of Power within the first couple of links, so yeah, that's a problem. Anyway, I don't think it has legal standing, but also they're enforcing their copyright. You're literally using the name Bionicle as the name of the game and so on. It's not all bad news. They have announced plans to develop their own game Project Rustbound, which will be built off the work they put into the Masks of Power. Now, this kind of goes back to something that I have said a lot of times about fan games. Is that you can't rely on the IP owner to be okay with it. Because most of the time they won't be. But the other issue is that legal teams change a lot, legal advice changes a lot, upper executive management changes a lot. Just because you have an agreement with one of them at one time doesn't mean that a couple of months down the line they change their mind and have to effectively delete, memory hole a lot of your work. Which I would just say is make your own thing. I know it's easy to use a pre-existing IP to get word of mouth, get people interested in it. You know, if you say I'm making a fan game based on Star Wars, based on whatever, based on some big brand thing that everyone recognizes, you're going to get a lot more press and a lot more kudos, and maybe you'll get more people into your Patreon or something, whatever. But you're going to have that legal problem. And it's always going to be there. It's going to be hovering over you forever. Make your own thing. You don't have that problem. Do you not get the same word of mouth? Maybe not. You might have to be under the radar for a very long time before you can show it off, but you can stand over it then. You know, there's no possibility, well, significantly less possibility of some kind of IP or trademark infringement thing. That's all I would say. If you have the skill to make a game, they have a lot of skill. Just make your own thing. Just do your own thing. Don't make a fan game. Anyway, moving on. Slightly better news. Final Fantasy XI was going to be shut down last year, but fans kept it alive, the director says. The game has been going since 2002, which is almost like 25 years, nearly. It's kind of insane. Anyway, originally released on the PS2, which didn't even have internet capability. You had to buy a separate accessory. You had to get an Ethernet adapter for your PS2 in order to get internet, which wasn't available in a lot of places anyway in the first place. So it's kind of insane that they decided to put out an MMO at the time anyway. Anyway, the PC version is playable to this day. The Xbox and PlayStation ports have been shut down for a long time now. Anyway, after the game's 20th anniversary, Square Enix had been planning to potentially end support of the game in 2024. There was a real possibility that 2024, last year, would be the year updates would come to an end, with the game shifting into a so-called maintenance mode where only system upkeep would be performed, i.e. there'd be no new content. Like, it's getting new content for 23 years. It's crazy shit. Anyway, instead, because players continued to log into the game and keep playing it and keep buying things for it, it just had the exact same monthly subscription fee of like $12, which is also crazy. It's never gone up. Nuts. And showed the development team a lot of support. It has decided the game will continue. We thought if the voracious resurgence wrapped up and Final Fantasy XI clearly started losing its momentum, so the voracious resurgence is the most recent content update, basically, then maybe we should really prepare to end it, but that didn't happen. I took this as a sign that we should keep running the game. So instead of closing down the game that originally launched on the PS2 23 years ago, Square Enix has announced on Friday that it is bringing a new, more updates to the game. That's insane. Crazy shit. Good for you. That's also very much something I would not expect Square Enix to do. I would have expected Final Fantasy XI to be shut down a long time ago, so it is kind of crazy. Anyway, we will leave. I guess we'll leave Fantasy Life to go in the background. Anyway, that was a long weekly news recap. So yeah, pretty big SixOne indie showcase. 48 games. It was actually more than 48 games because they had a pre-show. Lots of them in there. I kind of glossed over a lot of them. I'd encourage you to check them out. There is the Steam landing page where you can get a lot more information about some of the ones that you may or may not have found interesting. The Warhammer Skulls showcase, there's some interesting things there. Dark Heresy looks interesting, but it's obviously going to be a while before it is out. And Bolt Gun 2 getting a sequel is kind of fun. I didn't think it would, Not that I didn't think it would sell well or whatever, because it always just seemed like it was a throwaway game in some ways, because I always felt it was almost marketing in some ways for Space Marine 2. So it getting a sequel is pretty cool. I'm not going to remember everything we talked about today. Hellblade 2 making its way over to PlayStation. Good. Microsoft's continuing it, and it really shouldn't have been because the original game was on PlayStation. And it continues to frustrate me that a lot of sequels are exclusives, either to Xbox or to PlayStation or to Switch. Dog is pissed about something. Anyway, a lot of new releases. Fantasy Life I am interested in checking out. It is a bit expensive, like €60, something like $60. Tainted Grail, similarly, quite interested to check out. I'm not sure what the price point on that one is. But it's effectively Oblivion, but it's an Oblivion I haven't played to death, so yeah, do want to kind of give that a shot. Yeah, I don't know. There were a lot of new releases. Onimusha 2 is the one I really want to play, and I know that's not like an $80 fucking thing, so that'll be good. Anyway, industry bullshit, the stuff with Randy Pitchford, I mean, we shouldn't be surprised, he's such a fucking idiot, but again, the tone deafness of the $80 price point. Now, the games cost too much discourse has been going on for a long time. It certainly predates the jump from $70 to $80 or $50 to $60 and so on. I remember they used to be $39.99 pound, when Ireland still had the pound and not, or the punt as we called it, and not the euro, back in my day and so on. But like in today's money, that would be in and around like 100, probably something like that. It's still a lot of money. The problem is, again, is people's salaries didn't move up with inflation. So even if the numbers might match, the actual value of your take-home pay has not gone up. And Randy, it's not that I don't think he knows these kind of things, but one, he doesn't set the price. Take-Two will set that price. And who knows what they'll set it for. And also, there's going to be like a Borderlands 4 Deluxe Edition, a Vault Hunters Edition or whatever that's going to be like $150 or something stupid. So it's not like it's going to even be like the $80 will be like the cheapest fucking version one. The point is, he's an idiot, but the stuff he's saying is indicative of what a lot of upper executives think, really. Is that we're going to match it because Nintendo has effectively ripped the blaster off. Right. Yeah, I was just talking about them and I don't even remember what it was. Anyway, I'm going to move on. I don't know why I do these recaps because I just keep fucking forgetting what I was talking about. What we're going to talk about now, though, is what I've been doing off stream because I haven't been streaming for a while now. Anyway, I'm still playing Blueprints. I have at this point found the Room 46 thing, which is central thrust of the game. There's a lot more to it after that. There's a lot of other mysteries that I'm still working out. I am at a point now where I have kind of narrowed it down. There's only like so many things and secrets that I haven't found. But due to the nature of the game, in that it is random, it's getting a little frustrating that I'm not getting the rooms that I need and the drops that I need, and I'm like multiple days that no progress is made. Like, it is super annoying now at this point. And I think is going to be a reason why it's going to be a common complaint about the game. 'Cause I've already heard it in a lot of other people talking about the end game or the post game, if you like, after you've found Room 46. Which is that the amount of control you have over what rooms spawn and what items spawn in those rooms and so on is not enough. You need more control. Whether they address that in future updates or not, I don't know. But right now, it's kind of frustrating. Also, though, because that's frustrating, I've moved on to playing some other games. So I'm also playing Caravan Sandwich. So Caravan Sandwich, you are effectively looking for your sister. You've gotten a distress signal from her. She was assumed dead 6 years ago. So you getting a distress signal from her is a bit weird. So she went missing 6 years ago and assumed dead. And the assumption is that, yeah, she was dead. That's what assumed me is Eric. Anyway, but as you can see, it is kind of like a traversal, like adventure thing. Mostly based around this little caravan thing that you have. It has its own little different attachments, like a scanner and a grappling hook, and eventually the grappling hook can provide power and electricity. You can use it as a pulley traversal system, like a zip line and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of fun, just getting to know the characters and things that you discover in the area. It's not a very big game. It's not even a very long game. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm pretty close to the end. But there's a lot to do, and the characters are a lot of fun. They have a lot of personality to them. A lot of the side content is interesting because you get to spend more time with those characters. And there's no fall damage, so you can just jump off shit and not have to worry about it, which is honestly one of the better parts of the game. Anyway, I'm enjoying that, but I am coming to the end of it, so I'm going to need something new pretty soon. And maybe Fantasy Life, if I don't look at the total when I'm doing the checkout, I might be able to convince myself to play it. Anyway, that's what I've been doing with my time. I'm gonna might as well leave this to loop. Anyway, that's it from me. I meant to swap over to the other camera, but I forgot to do it. Alright, I'm gonna head off. Have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.